Welcome to What Makes You Tick Best Bits. If you think that AI is going to magically fix hiring, you need to think again. The problem isn't that we don't have enough resource, and the problem isn't that there's too much volume. The problem is it's already not human enough. The problem is that we're not treating people like they're assets for the business, like they're investments, like we need to sell to them and understand to them. It's a two-way decision. So if we put AI in front, all we're doing is getting to a worse outcome faster. Inputs equal outputs. I was on the Maxed Out podcast last week with Heath Barnett, one of my favorite people, podcast alumni, and we talked all about exactly this problem. Why are businesses trying to fix something with AI that needs to be fixed with great people and a better lens? So we hire multipliers, not dividers. That's how you grow your business. Enjoy.
All right, welcome to Mixology. I am joined here today by Richard. He is the founder of Tick Talent, a specialized tech talent consultancy that has become the secret weapon for scaling startups across Europe and beyond. He's got over 15 years in the GTM recruitment trenches. You've seen firsthand how bad the wrong hire can torpedo a startup's trajectory, and how the right multiplier, which we're going to talk about today, can really transform that entire organization. Man, what really sets you apart is that your track record is not just about recruiting, but it's about placing exceptional go-to-market leaders, into the right companies and making sure that they're positioned the right way. And your systematic approach to really decoding what makes certain people exponentially more valuable than others. And I think that's what's led to what we're going to talk about, your Multiplier Scorecard, right? Which is, from my understanding, and we'll dig deeper, it's a framework that's really become a viral sensation for founders who are really tired of hiring A players who turn out to be the culture wrecking balls. So, man, really excited to have you to be on the show today. Tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
Pleasure, by the way. Thank you so much for all of that wonderful introduction. I love it. My head's like this now. I'm just a person trying to figure it out like everyone else, really. But yeah, I think that so my background is that I started in tech sales as like an SDR 2007. Back in my day, it was called lead generation specialist, paid £7.20 an hour to basically get leads for Xerox. And then I went through this process of thinking I wanted to be a salesperson, then being shown down the leadership path by a really good manager who saw that potential within me. And I'm so glad, because I love the people side more than the PO side. And I went on this whole career inside a business. We were about 50 people. We grew to 450 people around the world. Spent some time in Miami when we bought a business and then assimilated them into our group. Did the same in Auckland and the same in Barcelona. So I had a bit of a global career over 12 years and was a director managing a business unit with 100 people. It's like a 6 million invoicing target. I'm responsible for the whole P&L, training, coaching, development, everything. But I burned out. And I was like, by the end of that 12 years, I was like, really, is this what I want to be doing for the rest of my career? Is my next stage VP? Do I really want that in this business? And I kind of just lost the love a little bit. I had a personal thing happen, which is my sister passed away. And I think when you have those jolts in your life, it makes you question things in a way that you wouldn't have questioned before. And so I was like, well, this is the time for me to go and do this thing that I've always wanted to do, which is start a business. Started an e-commerce brand and failed miserably. Did the whole YouTube video thing, And then you finish the YouTube video where you're like, I've learned all this stuff. I'm really excited. Buy my course. And you're like, oh, no, another one. So I tried to do that for 9 months and failed miserably, but learned a lot. After being in a business for that long, to just be on your own, trying to figure it all out, was brilliant for me. And it really exposed this massive gap, which is I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't know how to be. So I got around an entrepreneur, became part of his company, which was an angel investment fund along with a D2C marketing agency. And then we built a talent business inside that organization with its own P&L, but not as its own entity. Did that for a year and a half, proved the concept, and then took it over as my little baby business, Tick Talent, just over two and a half years ago now. So it's been a a roller coaster ride, but it all comes back to this passion of how do we hire incredible people who've got that potential to grow as our business grows. So you're not looking for like people who are just going to fill a role and, you know, we're done. It's like, who are those ones that have got all those raw materials and the right attitudes and behavior to potentially become directors one day, or maybe, you know, come with us on a global journey, and selling that vision and selecting those people and then training and coaching and developing them to become that was my favorite thing in the world to do.
That's awesome, man. I'm really curious, because when you talked about how you started off as an SDR and then you naturally evolved into this, it made me kind of think back of like every single talent acquisition person that I've ever worked with, right? I don't like the word recruiter because I think it's like just like a simplified version. I mean, really it is like every partner that I've worked with, it is like, how do we bring in the right talent, right? Because I think it's critical. And in my experience, the best ones have always been ones that came from a sales background, because hiring in go-to-market is not easy. You can't take like someone who is a very technical background, used to hire engineers and developers, and then go tell them to hire an SDR or a sales manager. So like, what do you think? I think two questions I have is like, what having that sales background set you up for success to really be able to step into this and take it to the next level? And then what was it? Was it just the passion for people, or what was it that made you really realize that like, this is what I love doing?
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. I think particularly in startups, it's a sales job, first of all, right? Really being a recruiter or acquiring talent, you're basically doing SDR work, right? At the first stage, which is, who's my ICP? Let's go and find them. Maybe we go and promote to get some inbound, or we go out and hunt. But we're going to find people, and then we have to, through a message or a call or a referral or something, get hold of them. And then in a way that's all about them, to create the excitement and the interest. And then when we speak to them, the conversation shouldn't be about, hey, we've got this opportunity, let me tell you all about it. It's, hey, you know, why might this be the right time for us to have a conversation? You know, what's that niggle that you've got right now? Tell me about the type of challenge that you would be looking for. Where are you not fulfilled? What are you moving away from goals? What are you moving towards goals? Like, just really doing that sort of consultancy discovery piece with people and making them feel important and understood. And then only if what they're looking for aligns with what you've got, would you introduce it, but in a way that relates to what they're looking for. And I think that that's just the opposite of how most businesses structure hiring, which is, what do we need? Whack out an ad and then attract 500 people, because it's a recruiter's market. You know, it's like, you know, it's a company market. There's so many people out of work. It's so hard right now. And now we screen and vet people. Hey, why do you deserve to work in my business? So it's not a sales job at all. What's the sales piece? The job advert? What, the copy and pasted job description that they got from ChatGPT? Is that sales? You know, it's terrible, right? So I think that part is crucial. If you have the fundamental skills to find or attract people with proper marketing, and then you have proper discovery consultancy to really understand their goals and then align, and then if it's a natural fit, bring them in. And by the way, then that's when the sales process really starts, because all you've got is this person just on a hook of a slightly being interested to want to speak to you. But then you've got to sell the vision of the business. And then, like you said on my podcast, scare the shit out of them with all the challenges and gaps and problems that exist, because you don't want to bring people into this rosy unicorn filled world where we're talking about rocket ships and IPOs, when the reality is you don't have a playbook, you don't have marketing, you're replacing someone that failed, and your manager's green, you know, and we're in a really competitive space, and we've got a tenth of the resource of the competitors we're trying to take the market share of. So that's what I think in terms of the first one. I know I gave you a lot there, and you asked me a second question, but what did you want to ask off the back of that?
Man, on the back, I love it. One, I completely agree with you. People have asked me a lot of like, what is it about managers, right? And I'll bring it full circle, I promise.
Yeah.
And I always say, like, the hardest thing about leading people is people. Like, human capital is the hardest thing to manage, because there is no playbook. There is no cookie cutter. Every single person is motivated differently. Every single person reacts differently. And I think the best revenue leaders or GTM leaders, they understand like how to actually understand and use that motivation to help, grow and also, help people get productive.
Yeah.
Same thing on the I'm going to say headhunter, right? Just because that's like the most common.
Yeah.
I actually, in a lot of organizations that I've built, that is actually one of the job titles I will go and look for, because I do truly believe this, and it's proven right every time I've made this hire. The top headhunters at these like big firms, they actually tend to be the best sellers because they know how to actually navigate the ambiguity well.
Yeah.
And it's because we were talking about this before we started, right? Like people are the ones that change their minds the most.
Yeah.
In my view, it's one of the hardest deal cycles to actually manage to get to the finish line. And so I've got nothing but respect, because I think, to what you're saying, it's what separates the good from the great, right?
Yeah.
Because I've worked on the other side where it is the copy paste, where it's like, I've received the job description. It's like, fill this out. Tell me what questions to ask. And it's like, no, I want to give you characteristics I'm looking for and themes that we're looking for. And then let's go and discover that and actually do proper discovery. So like, I think you hit the nail on the head on that one, man. And it almost answered question 2, which was, what's the passion? And I could see the passion in your response, but like, what is it that made you want to make that transition to where you're like, I want to go all in on this?
Yeah, it's a good question. Let me answer that in just a second, because you touched on a really interesting thing, which is, I also think there's a really important part here around the fact that if you come from this background, you kind of have empathy for it, and you've got credibility and you understand how it works and how it should work and how people should be treated. But the other side is you speak the language. And you talked about good and great. Good is the enemy of great. So like, if you actually go, right, my job is let's say I'm a talent acquisition person inside a company, and I'm working on 97 roles across 3 people, and I've got all these hiring managers screaming because they need updates. And I'm doing a technical role 1 minute, then a CSM role, then a leadership role, then an SDR across all these different languages. That's a horrendous job. And you might be able to do it, but as soon as you start speaking to those people and you're not using their language and you're not asking the right questions and you're not understanding what is good and what's great and that difference, what are you going to do in terms of the ability to hook that person, as well as identify who are actually the people who are going to go very successful? So I think that being specialist in that you've got lived experience with the role means that you can speak the language. You know what great looks like because you've seen what shit looks like. And you've seen what good looks like, but you've also seen who were those multipliers, the ones that go in like 10x the impact. And I think that anyone who's worked in an industry and understands it intimately could recruit in that industry. But if you've been very good in a sales role, you could probably be very good as a sales recruiter. If you've been a leader, then you could probably identify what a good leadership person looks like. But it's only like, I think, and it's quite a small pool of people probably who would go into sort of senior leadership roles where maybe like 2nd or 3rd line leaders, and then be recruiting for those roles, who would then transition into the kind of like recruitment side, because it's probably much less certain in terms of a career path, unless you start your own business, to go down that route. But if you have managed managers and you've made all the mishires at a management level and you've seen the disruption that that has on culture, then I think that's when you can become a really good leadership recruiter. And that's really where you would want a headhunter, right? Because the volume's so much lower and you have to be so good and accurate with the very few number of at-bats that you get to go and get that market position closed.
And you hit a good one, because I think this is the challenge in most startups and scale-ups, is you have one person on your team who is leading all talent acquisition. They're doing exactly what you said. They're trying to hire across multiple roles. And that almost, where I'm sure it comes back to probably managing the client, is the hardest piece, because you have to manage those expectations of what you're looking for. Because exactly when you were talking about it, I was like, well, yeah, like my response to that is, well, duh, right? But like, it's something so simple that we overlook, because we do it in sales even, where it's like, oh, let's go after a new vertical. And you just take this rep that has nothing but B2B SaaS experience and you tell them to go sell real estate. And you're like you can't expect them to be good at that vertical, because like they're just not specialists in that role.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the same thing when it comes to the talent acquisition side. So like, I get it. It's funny because we almost kind of just like in the first 5 minutes uncovered like a whole kind of GTM model of like what good talent acquisition looks like.
Yeah,
So
exactly that. You're totally right. It is. Everyone told me when I was starting this business, people will be your biggest problem. You're now managing things that can say no. This isn't SaaS. But I've always found that the candidate side, the people side, the talent side, is so easy because you're clear on what they want. It's just them making the decision. And as long as you transparent with them, and then you actually take the time to coach them and actually take the time to inform them properly and really prepare them to go and get the best outcome from each interaction, they're really grateful, because most people don't do that. Most people just introduce them and then disappear, don't give them any feedback. They're really unclear. They don't have the relationship. But the client side is much more challenging because you have multiple stakeholders who have their own preferences and biases and needs and requirements and expectations and bad experiences. So trying to navigate through getting all those people to agree that this person is the person that they should bring in, and they should move with the speed that you require, because time kills deals, and time kills deals in recruitment faster than anything I've ever seen, because FUD kicks in with humans feeling not wanted. But the great process is quick, and if you find someone that's great, bam, get them in. Because if you can make people feel wanted and valued and special, probably that's what they're not getting in their current environment.
Oh, I get it. I mean, because exactly what you're talking about there, right? I mean, if you put it back into relatable for our listeners, if they're, sellers especially, is this is how we understand the decision dynamics of a deal.
Yeah.
Same thing for you with recruiting. It's the stakeholders, because if you're hiring for, let's just use a VP of sales, right?
Yeah.
You have to then navigate, does the VP of marketing or the CMO, right? Are they aligned with what that person is bringing to the table? Is the VP of customer success aligned with what they're bringing to the table? It's the same exact way of you have to manage those decision dynamics in that ultimate buying committee. And so it's not that different from sales, right? I mean, it goes back to what you're saying is recruiting is sales.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to today was dig into, I want to talk about the Multiplier Scorecard. But before that, I also want to dig, because the landscape is changing, man. And so I talk a lot about how AI has revolutionized go-to-market, but I'm actually really curious. I want to pick your brain about how AI and how the evolution of go-to-market has also changed the talent acquisition landscape, because I have to imagine it's drastically different today than it was, yesterday. And so go-to-market's transformed in the last 24 months. And so from your perspective, how has the landscape evolved from a perspective of in the talent trenches?
Can I swear?
Yeah, of course.
It's fucked it up. And not because AI is bad, but because people misunderstand the problem. So people go, right, we're a business who every time we promote a job and advertise a job, we get 500 applications. So what's our problem? Our problem is we need a way to automate the screening and vetting so that we can get down to a manageable size of list for us to then go and do our traditional process. But it's not the problem. AI needs great inputs, right? So if what you're doing is you're putting out into the world this job advert, which is just a copy and pasted JD from ChatGPT, or an amalgamation of all these things that all those different stakeholders want, so we get this camel built by committee, is you send out this incredibly vague thing into the world, so everyone thinks it sounds relevant and applies, and it's so easy for them to just hit easy apply nowadays, unless they're using AI to make that process even more simple, because they're writing custom cover letters for each role. And then you've got an AI then making decisions about people. So the way I see it being used is, and we see all these job adverts and all the time, which is the process says your first stage will be an AI recruiter. And it's oh my goodness me. So this AI is going to make a decision about you based on your resume, your 2-page document, which you've never had any coaching and training on ever to go and build, against their predefined list of what they're looking for. So immediately, probably 70% of people are being disqualified because the 2 pieces of paper don't match, not because the human and the challenge don't match. And then when they actually go through the process, it's all about how can we make AI do a bunch of the sort of manual tasks that are causing us a load of pain. which is broken. So where I see AI working really well, and there are some people doing this really well, I partner with a company who've got an AI video platform. So when I post my roles, and we always try and promote and search, because why would you not advertise a thing that's really good? You never, someone who's wicked might have just been part of a company that just riffed half the people, And on LinkedIn, it's not just active job seekers who are looking for new roles. You could just have had a bad one-to-one, and then you're on LinkedIn and it's like recommended jobs pop up, right? They're passive, totally passive, but they're relevant. And so the whole point here is that if you can create a situation where you post a role, then I can record a video talking about the opportunity to humanize it a bit more. And then they can send a video back to me, which you can easily do with AI technology these days. Then it's people making a decision based on feeling and what they get in terms of the perception. And I can color in the job opportunity much more than if it's just a job advert. So that's a really good use case. The other side of it from a candidate perspective is everyone's using AI, but just for like the same thing, which is like to coach them as well as to record stuff. So what I see now is I'll be doing an interview with someone and they're looking off over there and like reading out these answers to me. And I'm like, oh no, this is just so wooden. And I know it's all being recorded, So I think it makes people way more safe, even less human, much more like robotic, a much more cardboard cutout version of themselves. So I love it, and it will become great, but I think it will actually get much, much worse before it gets better because people are using it to solve the wrong problem.
All right, so we got to dig into this then. I want to debunk a couple of things or validate, right?
Yeah.
The first thing I started thinking of when we were talking about this was like all the talk about these application tracking systems. And so like if anybody's listening to this right now and they're actually, looking or even passively looking, like, what are the things that you would recommend to them to be able to stand out? Because, for example, I could be completely wrong when I say this, and I'm like, is application tracking system, is that more of like your corporate, very structured organizations or startups even doing that with most of the HR platforms that they use today? I actually don't know. Yeah. But I'm curious from your perspective is like, what are the things that we should worry about? What are the things we shouldn't worry about?
Yeah, so ATS system, if they've hired a HR person who's come from big corporate, they'll have an application tracking system. If not, then they won't have anything and they'll just be happy to use Excel, or Google Sheets. So it's a real mixture. But again, those systems aren't like helping businesses to be more human and to sell their vision more clearly. They just automate stuff, and then they go like the AI automation built into it, so it doesn't really work. So remind me of the question, Heath. I went off on a tangent then about.
No, you're good. It's just like what are some of the recommendations that you would make to potential candidates that are out there or even passively? Like, let's say, if you found a role today and of like how much AI and these ATS systems are really like dehumanizing it, what are recommendations that you would give to that candidate to help them kind of separate themselves?
So let's put a link in the show notes to a playbook that I wrote called the Dream 20 ICP playbook. And it's literally like how to go and treat your recruitment process as a candidate from a go-to-market perspective. So I would always say, if you remember the real root cause of the problem is job adverts are inaccurate because they're created by AI and then put out to go and collect 500 resumes because they think that's what good looks like, is we need to circumnavigate that and just try and get to the root cause of the problem, which is the hiring manager who's, lost the agent or is trying to promote people or has got the requirement to fill an additional 3 seats. So we want to get through to that person as quickly as we possibly can. And we know what would you do if you're a salesperson trying to get a hold of a specific person, is you would try and get a nice referral into that person if you possibly could. Or maybe you would do some creative prospecting to send a video or a voice note or some kind of custom message that talks about their challenges and their problems. And I think if you can do that, then you'll stand out from everyone else. The other thing is, particularly if we're talking about salespeople here, it's very rare that a hiring manager, and by the way, that language of hiring manager, I never thought of myself as a hiring manager when I was a hiring manager. I was just a leader trying to hire people. So maybe don't use hiring manager when you reach out to people. But that revenue leader is probably not got a complete team. They might say they're not hiring or they're not advertising a role on LinkedIn. They've got a gap. It's either someone they're trying to promote but can't, so they can't succession plan, or it's someone on a PIP, or someone's going on maternity, or someone wants to change role, there's always change happening inside that business. So I would always just go, if I like the business, so they make it onto my Dream 20, very likely they're going to be hiring. Or they could make space for someone who is great. And if you're a salesperson, that hiring manager, that revenue leader, is going, why aren't my sales team making enough calls? Why aren't they having enough new business meetings? Why aren't they being proactive in their outreach? Why are they not taking ownership? So someone pops up and says, hey, did this bit of research, love what you're doing. Notice this is probably your bigger challenge right now. You want more ICP pipeline and someone who's able to go and convert that. That's what I do. If you're open, I'd love to have a conversation. And they're going to be like, oh my God, this angel just came in and talked about my biggest challenge and my biggest problem. So I can't think of a world where that hiring manager or the revenue leader wouldn't be happy to receive that message. And then if they literally tell you, I cannot hire you even if I wanted to, because we've got a hiring freeze, boom, take that intelligence and move on to the next company. At least you know.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying don't apply for jobs, but I'm saying if you apply for jobs, know you are going into a competitive situation against 500 other people. And then you can still do this approach of getting in front of the actual right person. But what you often find is companies put up guards of process to say, hey, we've got a process live. You need to speak to Clive in HR before you speak to me, because they're going, we put process in to protect our time. But they will not really disqualify good outreach. They'll just disqualify people going, hey, saw you advertised a role. Here's my resume. Here's 5 reasons why you might like me. But that's not how you'd sell and prospect. So my best advice is find the right person who's actually got the pain and the problem. Get empathy to think about where they are and what their problems are. And then get a referral in or send some sort of creative prospecting, ideally like a video, because it's how we sell nowadays, right? To talk about them and their problems. And worst case scenario, they tell you no, but that's great because then you can get them off the list.
I love that. So we talked about how AI has almost changed a little bit more of the recruiting game.
Yeah.
How has AI changed up from your perspective, working with multiple clients? Like, how has it actually changed hiring priorities? Like, what are things that you're noticing, either good or bad? Because I do feel like we're seeing a little bit of too far of one end of the spectrum, and we're gonna figure out where that equilibrium is at some point. But I'm curious to hear from you. Like, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I actually asked a revenue leader today. So we had James Smith, who's the VP of EMEA for ThoughtSpot. And he's working on this whole thing around 10xing productivity of a sales team. And they're utilizing AI in every element of their sales process to become 10 times more effective. And I asked him, how is it affecting how he hires? And he says he now asks a question that he wasn't asking 6 months ago, which is, how are you using AI to be a better salesperson? Like, have you done anything about it in terms of which tools you're using? Have you vibe coded something? And it's not that they have to have already vibe coded some kind of agent. If they have, I mean, they're definitely growth mindset and they're thinking about using technology to become a better professional, which is a massive green tick in the box nowadays. But if they get defensive around that and go, AI is bullshit, that's a massive red flag. You've got one of the most powerful tools that's ever been invented that you can basically get to do anything that you can imagine yourself without any technical requirements and without a big budget instantly. If you don't see that as an opportunity, I mean, you're fucked. So it's just like a very simple use case to actually ask a question around how people are using it. Now, what you might find, and what James said that he finds, is he only really got onto the AI train properly about 6 months ago and he admitted paying it lip service for about a year. And I'm like, I paid it lip service. We all did. We all talk about AI. Yeah, we use AI just because we've got Fathom recording stuff and we use some AI to help us with our content. But are you actually really creating apps and creating value for your business? And so if they say, I'm not, it's their reaction to that, like a really good leader, if they ask a question, which is so I'll give you an example. The other day, Jacob Warwick, who came on our podcast, who's phenomenal in the world of marketing and executive coaching, asked me, what's your AI tech stack? And the blood drained out of my face because I was like, it's shit. But candidly, like I use AI every day, but how much is it automating and changing my workflows, or how much is it just making me faster? And the answer is I'm not really using it to its capability. So I'm only just, I know we spoke about it in the green room, but I'm building my first AI agent next week and I'm really excited about it. But because he asked me that question, what's your AI tech stack? It exposed a gap in me that made me want to go and fill it really quickly. Mm-hmm. So I think if you can find people who might not already be on the journey, but you identify that there's this big opportunity for them to improve, and it ignites something in them because their leadership team aren't asking that question. It's not encouraged. Maybe the business is anti-progression and anti-AI. They go, oh my God, I'm getting asked this question by this person about this opportunity. I really, really attach value to the gap that I could fill by joining that company. Mm-hmm. So I think that the most obvious place to start is just ask people what they've done already and what their attitude is towards it. And my strong advice would be, unless there's an incredibly good reason why they shouldn't be using AI, which I can't think of one, disqualify people who are anti it. Yeah. Because they won't grow with your business in the next 2-3 years. They'll get left behind, and so will you.
Yeah, I could see the only area I could see that response is okay is like if you're in a very if you're in an industry that is like highly secure.
Yeah.
Because there are some companies that won't allow like their actual internal, data to even go into AI. But that's not most companies. I agree with you. It's one question I've changed. I used to always ask, what's the most recent book you've read?
Yeah, 100%.
Because I want to understand what are they doing to continue to develop and grow themselves. Yeah. But now I'm more on the AI side, and like I'm waiting for the day when I interview someone, when they ask me, how are you as a revenue leader implementing AI to make your reps better? And I agree with you. Like it doesn't take this robust tech stack, right? I mean, I'll give you an example as simple as Mixmax. I paid for all of my reps to have the Claude Pro plan. Very simple. Yeah. And then what I do is I will build master prompts or prompt chains that I can share with the team for them to then be like, hey, just copy this and make your own agent. Yeah. So we've made agents that plan out their daily schedule. It analyzes their calendar, does a quick ICP analysis on the customer, and then it also looks at all of their time blocks and it makes prospecting suggestions. Hey, you should probably manage your deals at this time, prospect at this time. The other one that we've also done is sequence building. I think sequence building, Mixmax has our own AI sequence builder. And then we've also taken another one internal for like when we're testing new campaigns, is basically like we're able to give it the vertical we're going after, how many steps we want it to be, and like what type of campaign it is. And it will create the actual sequences for my reps. Because that's the most time consuming piece is like the actual building the infrastructure. And so I agree with you. Like, I think one of the things is like a lot of us are apprehensive because we just don't know where to start. Yeah. And I think like you can just start at the very basics. And then from there, at least for me, it was like once I bit into that AI apple, I was like, holy shit, there's so much more that I can do. And I realized that the only limit is myself. Yeah. And so how do I actually make sure that I'm removing my own limitations in order for us to continue to grow? And so I think that's an amazing question that should be asked.
Yeah.
How is it changing around the way that leaders are thinking about hiring? Are people thinking differently around, especially in sales, right? There's the whole AI SDR thing right now. How has that changed a little bit when you're talking to revenue leaders?
It hasn't yet massively. They all talk about it, but it's lip service. And I think it's really good for us to acknowledge that. Like I have been paying AI lip service. I would say, yeah, I'm using AI, but this one question exposed to me, there's a whole gap and I'm going to get left behind unless I fix this gap. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people say, yeah, this is important to us, but is it actually changed how they recruit, what their criteria is, how that rep will actually start life? What's their enablement going to look like? How are they supported through technology? I think it's very much the same. We still want you to come in with no marketing support, go and build your own pipeline, be a 300K SDR, and then suddenly close 1.2 million in your first year. That's the expectation. So it hasn't really yet. Everyone wants it to, but it's not filtering through. I think that so many people are just stuck in type. And I just do believe that a lot of people, because the market, whilst it looks really bad, and there'll be people listening to this who are out of work, and I appreciate how hard it is when you are out to try and get back in. But a lot of people are still in jobs, still doing things the way that they have been. We're all going to get massively disrupted by this, and I do believe way more jobs will be created than they get removed, in the same way that think of all the SaaS jobs that have been created in the last 15 years that didn't exist before this all came out. So much they thought this would get rid of all these people. No, boom, all these roles have come out. So what I think the biggest problem is that we're still looking at historical ways that we used to do things to grow moving forward. And the best people, and I'm only starting to see it with some very exceptional leaders like James from ThoughtSpot, is they are going, we're changing the way we're working. We're going to have to think about who are the people that are going to come on this journey with us for the next 3 to 5 years, because it won't be the same people that we've been looking at before. And this whole thing around, is the person who got you from like 1 to 10 million the same person to get you from 10 to 50 and 50 to 100? Businesses are doing that like this, right? Like if you look at Fixer AI, they went to 15 million ARR in 7 months. What's Lovable? Lovable's getting more new users a day than ChatGPT. Yeah. AI companies will grow so fast that the people that they hire, unless they're on this train, will become obsolete and get replaced really, really quickly. So I think finding those characteristics and the behaviors that make someone stay with you as you all figure it out, from the CEO to the SDR, is the answer.
I love that, because I think you hit a really good point. I think we're at a good inflection point in the industry to where like first principle thinking is actually like the best thinking right now, because you can literally rethink go to market and rethink everything.
Yeah.
I think to your point is, on the other end, where I think people are going to run into that wall at some point is thinking AI is another silver bullet, right? And it's to your point, it's like throwing out the word AI just to say AI, even though you have no idea of like how are you actually making your organization, your team, your reps, like how are you making everything better?
Yeah.
And so I agree with you. Like the leaders that have this first principle mentality are approaching it the right way of like, well, why is this still a problem? How can we solve this problem now? I mean, I'll give you one quick example. I mean, at Mixmax, I killed our SDR program. I'm not saying on here that AI is going to kill SDRs, but I do think that certain industries that you can actually move more to are like a full sales cycle account executive.
Yeah.
But to your point is, I'm now rethinking of, well, that SDR that I used to have manually go prospect, how can I actually bring in a go-to-market engineer who can build out the orchestrations to warm those leads up and take them from, blue ocean to red ocean, right? It's like there's so many different ways that you can think about it. And so I love that.
100%.
So we've kind of like gone through this conversation around how the market has changed from the actual recruiting perspective, but I want to get now into the actual like interviewing side. And this is really where the Multiplier Scorecard comes in. I know me and you have talked about it. I absolutely love it. I love the concept. And so I want to hand it over to you, right? It's like you've created this framework. People love it. And so walk us through the core 4 factors and like, what makes someone a multiplier versus an adder or a subtractor. Break it down for us a little bit.
Yeah, cool. I'll start with the problem, if you don't mind.
I love that's the best way to start it.
So what's the big problem in hiring? So the data shows us, Sequoia did some analysis, and it's that 89% of mishires are due to attitude and cultural misalignment. And only 15% of businesses have defined the behaviors that make someone a top performer in their business. So I'm like, well, you're getting like almost 9 out of 10 failures fail because of a behavioral misalignment. And then you've got only 15% of businesses who've defined it. So what's the vast majority of reality for people today is they have a criteria that they go to market with, which probably starts with, we need you to have 5 years experience of doing the job that we want you to do in our stage of growth at the same salary. And you have to have been a top rep. And like expecting that why would that person leave? Like, it doesn't make sense. We're not going to pay you more. No, we'll probably pay you less because we're a scrappy startup. Or they go, actually, it's not even our stage of growth. We literally want you to be able to speak our language. You have sold into the same ICP as us. Doesn't matter if you've come from like, a massive enterprise company, even though we're a scrappy 2 million ARR startup, you are credible. We hire you. Boom. 9 out of 10 times that fails. So, and why don't businesses define it? I think it's because there isn't a common language. I'm going, this is, if you think about it, every element of business has a framework that's like universally understood. We had BANT and it's now like spiced. We've got Medic, we've got Sandler, we've got Gap, we've got all these tools. Same for marketing, same for coding, everything is frameworks. Hiring, no, we use language like A player. And I've asked, I can't even imagine how many it is, but well over 200 people. What's an A player? And every one of those people has given me an answer. The problem is, it's always a different answer. So there's not like a definition of it. And someone asked me that question. We talked about like great questions that kind of like interrupt our brain and make us realize we've got a gap. We have been like paying it lip service. Someone asked me, what's my definition of an A player? And I was like, I couldn't just give it off the top. So I was like, I'll go back to a book called Scaling Up by Rockefeller Habits that I read, where it had a definition of what an A player is. And then Bill Campbell in $1 Trillion Coach had a definition. So I gave like an answer like that. And then I realized it's not, even if I think that's the right answer, no one else agreed with it because, well, they might have gone, yeah, I agree. But it's not what we use. So we're not using it. So we've got this gap, which is a massive problem. It causes failure. We need to define it. But then there are tools that people have tried to bring into hiring to solve that problem. So we've all done personality profiling. We've all done Myers-Briggs. We've all done ColorWorks. We've all done DISC. But do we go, right, when we're hiring, we're looking for ENTPs? Or maybe they do, which would be weird to do, but maybe they do. Or what they probably do is say, as part of our hiring process, please go and do this online 66-question personality test. And then we won't give you any feedback on it, but we'll make a decision of whether we hire you based on the output of a test that you're doing on your own on your computer, which is a timed test, and maybe there's like some pattern recognition stuff and IQ testing as well that we're going to throw in just for good measure, because, we think it's important for our business. So why hasn't someone created a simplified model that looks at the behaviors that make someone have a high impact inside a business? And you could say, well, we've got skill will matrix. And I'm like, well, I love the skill will matrix. I taught it for years, 20 years ago. It was created from the situational model of 1969. It's good shit, But I'm going, well, that's really old school. And it was built for corporations to basically say, do you work hard and are you good? And I'm going, well, in this new AI world of scrappy startups where we're planning to grow from 2 to 1 billion, do we want a worker bee who's good at a particular role? No. We need someone who's going to grow with us and have loads of skills and be very highly motivated along that journey. So that doesn't work either. So what all of that, we come full circle, made me think, if it's not A player, B player, C player, and these engineered tools, which are generically used across every industry in the world, like Myers-Briggs and DISCs and all that sort of stuff, aren't useful, what are the patterns that we can see that make someone successful or not inside a business that deal with the behavioral gap that we have? And what I realized is there are 4 types of hires that you can make in a business: adders, subtractors, dividers, and multipliers. And it's like a box with a quadrant where above the line grows your business. Adders and multipliers are good. They will scale impact and drive alignment. Below the line are bad. Subtractors and dividers will cause negative impact inside your business. So it's math, positive and negative. And then it's like, well, what does that mean in terms of hires? And what I like about this model and what clicks with people is as soon as you just say that bit and you show them it, they go, yeah, I can think of 5 dividers that I've hired who I thought were wicked, but ended up being a massive problem for us and caused us a huge amount of cultural fallout. Or they're still in our business today and they're the top performers and we just can't get rid of them. Or they've got in a position of power now and that's just the culture. Don't speak to that person because they're horrendous, but we can't do anything about it because it's kind of like we've let it slip. Everyone goes, I get a divider. That makes sense. everyone goes, I get a subtractor because that's just a bad hire, not aligned, poor execution, not resourceful, no ownership, not collaborative, get them out. We also go, adders makes sense. Adders is, you could call it the B player, but it's like they're solid. They do the job. Don't make them your leaders because they're not going to go and hire or train someone to become a multiplier, but keep them in your business. And a great sales leader will be able to unblock the gaps that have stopped that person becoming more effective and make the B player an A player, which is like every sales leader's favorite thing in the world to do, right? I coach up the middle third, So we want these people in our business, and maybe they will reach a level of ceiling, and that's fine. You can build a whole massive business full of adders, but not in your key leadership positions. But what we all want is a multiplier. And this is someone who multiplies the impact of everybody around them and achieves astronomically better results than the average hire that you might make. So that's the model. What questions would you have off the back of that before we get into what makes a multiplier?
Man, I think like what would, especially since we're talking about some of the challenges of recruiting and finding the right talent or finding what good looks like today, if I didn't actually go through and have my own definitions of what makes a multiplier, what are some of the common things that you could give to our audience of like, hey, here's a couple of things to look for. Yeah. If you go into an interview today, look for these things, and this is going to tell you if there's a potential adder, subtractor, multiplier, divider.
Yeah, cool. So this is the beauty of the model, right? Is like you've said before, it's a framework. So that might be enough for businesses to say, well, I've got my own criteria. I know you have your own criteria, right? Smart leaders have. You're part of the 15%. You're only 15%, but you're part of it. So you might say, well, I can apply what I already know is a great hire behaviorally to this model. And then you can workshop it with your team. Now, a lot of people haven't done that thinking yet. 85% of people. So what are the things that make someone more impactful inside a business and drive better alignment and drive growth? For me, it comes down to 4 things. And it's not just that this is my opinion. I looked back at my 17-year leadership career, as well as the hundreds of hires that we've made for brands externally since. And it always came down to 4 elements. And it spells the word core. So it's the core 4. Collaborative, ownership, resourcefulness, and execution. So really quickly, collaborative is everyone loves working with them. And they work very well with people together to achieve a goal. Ownership, the hardest thing to teach, is do they take ownership over their work? It's their baby. It's their standard. You don't have to chase them. They come proactively. All that stuff that we want someone to have when they're a salesperson in go-to-market, which is it's their target, not your target. You might say the quote is that, but they're going, look, my target is that, whether it's be the top performer or whether it's achieve a certain revenue goal or whatever is theirs. Resourceful, particularly because we're talking about earlier stage businesses and startups, you have to be super resourceful to solve problems that other businesses can't solve, compete against businesses that have got way more resources. And it's one of the mishiring things is we look for people who've got all these resources and have been successful. No, take away all the resources. How resourceful can you be? And it's that ability to solve problems for customers, for your business, for yourself, and achieve the outcome. And then E, execution. Interestingly, when I poll this on LinkedIn, I've done it a few times now, the thing that people say is the hardest to hire is someone who has an execution bias, a bias for action. They get shit done. It's not just we talk a good game, we're nice culturally, we take ownership, we're resourceful, but we actually go and follow through and achieve the goal, no matter how hard it is. Or we help customers achieve their goals, but we get the result. So the core 4 characteristics make a multiplier. And if you miss any of those, you end up with one of the other types. So if they're not good on collaboration, then they'll probably be a divider. If they're not good at execution, they're probably a subtractor or an adder. And if they're not resourceful, they'll be more of an adder, because you have to have all of those 4 ingredients together to multiply impact.
I love that. I did not know that's what the core stood for. And as you were talking about it, I was thinking through and I was like, those really are the basic fundamentals of like what you're looking for. kind of give you an example of like mine that I feel like relates to your core four is one, I call it grit and growth.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Sales is hard. The growth mentality is about the collaboration, right? Is like, are we going to get better every single day? I also believe this in sales. Lone wolves die alone.
Yeah.
So when you were talking about dividers, like there were names that were popping in my head from scars. And I was like, yep, they were top performers, but they divided the culture. And there was a lot of things that got, caused from it. The other one is like I call it smarts and hearts, which is just the humility piece, right? Is like, are you resourceful? And then also, do you want to make sure that you're empathetic and helping others? And then the other one is own your shit, right? Like get shit done is my mentality. Ownership. I believe that I always ask this in an interview, what's more important? They're both important. What's more important, collaboration or ownership? And it always gets like a good debate. In my view, it's ownership because, man, we can collaborate all day. But if neither one of us walk away from that conversation owning something, nothing's going to get done. We just had a great collaboration session. Awesome. Yeah. And then the last one is I call it the FIO score, which is figure it out. And that's also the resourcefulness. And reps that I manage, they'll tell you is like always, if they come to me with a problem, I'm like, hey, your FIO's at like a 5. I need you to get that FIO score to like an 8, and then we can figure out how to solve this problem. So I love that. It's something so like very fundamental to where like the core, I can literally walk into an interview today and just have that in my mind and be like, okay, are they meeting those? I love that framework. It's very easy. And to your point, it's a framework. It's one of the challenges and problems I have with, you were talking about BANT and MEDIC and all these other like sales frameworks is we've created checkboxes with a lot of these frameworks. And I feel like what this does is doesn't create a checkbox, but it just puts you in a playing field to understand what you're actually looking for and kind of you're defining what good looks like while you're actually like executing.
Yeah.
Right. Which is cool.
Yeah, exactly. It's that common language, and I think it's a magnet for talent, right? So if you say to a person, hey, look, in our business, these core 4 characteristics are really important for us. We really believe in collaboration, ownership, resourcefulness, and execution. Like you set your stall. Whereas if you say to people, we only hire A players, like, what does it mean? People just don't know what that means. And you can't coach someone and say, hey, you're being a bit of a B player today. You just can't say it. So if you say to people, look, you're being a bit divisive, you're adding, but I really need you to be multiplying. And this is the thing that's missing. The right people will rise to that challenge. And leadership is, like you say, people are complicated. So we need to make sure it's easy for people to understand what good looks like, because the right people will hit it.
So I love that. And I want to build on that for a second, right? Because if I'm listening to this, having no context, I'm like, this is awesome. And I want to go implement this. But I also know that there's a lot of common mistakes that can be made from this. So what are some of the common mistakes that you see founders make when trying to hire their A players, and how the actual, how the multiplier scorecard kind of helps them avoid that pitfall?
Yeah. So the first thing is this multiplier scorecard, which I think we'll probably put a link into the show notes. It starts with a self-diagnostic. So you can say within our team today, particularly around our leadership team, where the behaviors are much more important because the impact is much higher, is how are we stacking up? What's our percentage of multiplier behavior, adder, divider, and subtractor? And then also our overall score, which is called the core 4 alignment score, which is how are we actually doing as a business? Like are we in the multiplier zone? Are we in like the adder zone? Are we at a high level of risk? Basically, how independent is my team? How collaborative are they? How resourceful are they? And how are they executing? And we can see from a behavioral view, and there's 20 questions that we ask in that, which takes 5 minutes to go and answer. You'll expose some of the consequences of the gaps that you've got, but also some of the strengths and hidden potential within your business. So I think it's like, first of all, let's use this framework to put a lens over our business to just think differently with some different language about what we're just taking for granted. And then help us to realize actually the impact of those behaviors are so much more important than if we just look for experience and skills and track record. So the mistake is we hire on resumes and for experience because we know that it's safer. But the data says 89% of the time that people mishire is because of attitude and cultural misalignment. So actually, whilst I'm not saying don't look for experience and track record, but that's like table stakes. Whether I hire you or not and what position I give you is based around the behaviours that you display. And there's a way of doing that. So if we talk about like how to do that in a business, in their hiring process, we want to look at it through 3 different lenses: past, present, and future. So what we often find is in recruitment, we spend all of our time talking about the past. Tell me about those deals. Tell me about that quota. Tell me about what happened. Tell me about what your territory was. It's all about track record, history. If the history is good, the future will be good. So we definitely do want to ask about the history. Tell me about the culture in your previous business, how collaborative it was, what role you took, Tell me about a project that you owned that you didn't get asked to own. Tell me about a problem that you solved by yourself. Tell me about a thing that everyone was suffering from that you fixed. Tell me about a goal that you hit through being resourceful, where you didn't have the answers, where you weren't getting the support, where the customer was struggling, how you achieved it. What was your process of problem solving? And then tell me about your successes. Let's go through the role you took, how you did it, what was your mentality, all that good stuff. But we also want to see during the process, how are they being? And so are they collaborative, like working with me, like a sales process to get me as the champion, my outcome of hiring my amazing person who's going to grow the business? Do we need to chase them for the next steps, or are they closing us for the meeting? Like a bam fam, Are they sending follow-up notes? All the stuff that we like to see. Let's look at how they're displaying the core 4 characteristics. Do they surprise us with their resourcefulness? And after each interaction, do we go, oh, they executed that flawlessly? I mean, if I was a customer, I would love to have spoken to that person, But then the thing that I think the very few businesses do is create a situation where they say, the challenge we're working on today as a business is this. Let's workshop how you would help us solve it, and how we can think better about that problem, and how we can help our customers get this outcome, because right now we're stuck. You're helping us as a business to fix this thing that's broken, or create this thing that's missing, or achieve this goal that's out of reach. And so if you create a future looking scenario based on a very specific gap that you've got, you give people the chance to show from everything they know, how will they help you to go and solve the goal. And I think if you look at it just through those 3 lenses, past, present, and future, against the core 4 characteristics, your chance of hiring the right person from a behaviours point of view, I haven't got the data yet. I need to run this a few thousand times, I think, to get a really good read, but it will definitely flip that 89% probably on its head.
Man, it almost sounds like it is your typical slow down in order to speed up scenario, right? And so what I'm hearing you say is, for anybody that's listening, is like, kind of look at yourself in the mirror before you start looking externally, and understand where you at today and what changes you need to make.
Yeah.
And so what's your advice for a founder if they do this and they realize, hopefully I have no dividers, maybe I have some subtractors, I know what I need to do, but like if I'm like, I got a lot of adders and I don't have multipliers, like what do I need to do to level that up?
I think it depends on the size of organization and how much leadership support they have. Like if it's just them and the reps, like that's them, they've got to step up, Like, am I creating an environment where people can collaborate? Mm-hmm. Is my culture collaborative, or is it more compliant or cooperative? Do people work together because we tell them to, And then it's like, do we let people take ownership, or do we micromanage them? Mm-hmm. Are we actually giving people the freedom to own a goal and to like say that things are broken, and to go and make decisions and come up with ideas and try and do things without us, like, the fear that we're just going to go and completely bollock them, as we would say in England, right? If they get it wrong, like there's safety. That's a leadership problem. Resourceful, like if someone's got an idea, do we back them, or do we tell them they can't do anything outside of the specific process and constraints that we've given them? Do we help people to create solutions for customers that might not exist today that we can enhance into our product? Or is it only sell this specific thing that's already boxed in, follow our script, follow our process, all these things that I know that we talked about in the podcast that you just like? And then is our culture one of high execution, or is like the standard that we're failing and that we're really struggling, and that everyone's sort of retracting into themselves? And if you've got a divider leader in charge of a group of people where they're just there to protect themselves, they've created a silo, that's how they've collected power, that's really dangerous. Unless you can fix that divider, your team will never, ever become multipliers, because they think to be rewarded in our business and get a certain level of seniority and a certain paycheck, you need to be like that. That's like the way you've got to be. You've got to be political, and you've got to play these games and create these silos. So I always think it starts with, you have to create as a business an environment where those behaviors can exist, and whatever other behaviors are really important for you, define that and then go, are we doing that? And then it's about making sure that people understand that that is your culture, your leaders, all the way through to your hiring team, all the way through to your enablement team, the whole process. And then just be constantly like measuring how are you doing against that goal. And if you've got to make a tough decision to exit some people or to up level and get a better caliber of people in, then you can. But I often think just introspectively looking at where you are today, you'll probably unlock a bunch of things that are blocking your people who all want to be desperately successful from taking the kind of ownership and resourcefulness that they want to achieve the goal.
Yeah, sometimes as leaders, we just need to get out of the way.
Yeah.
Right. Man, this is super insightful. And like, I can't wait to actually like drop this when we drop the episode, because I want to see what people do when they actually go and take the quiz, and maybe learn a little bit about themselves and their own hiring philosophy. But I know we're almost at the end of the episode, and so I want to go future looking with you for a little bit, right? So if we fast forward, crystal ball, it's 2030.
Yeah.
AI has obviously evolved exponentially by 2030. How has this transformed like the go-to-market, team composition and the very nature of the multiplier talent?
Oh, it's a really interesting question. I mean, there's going to be fundamental changes to how businesses hire. I mean, if you think about like this archaic process that we have a job advert, a written document, and a resume, a written document that we use to make a decision about the people that we bring into our business, which is your number one asset, probably each worth, $1 million a year in terms of revenue. It's probably a bigger decision in terms of getting an investor every time you bring a person into the business. So I can definitely imagine there'll be a world where businesses have got a front end where they really show off what the culture's like in their business. And it's really clear for people to go and self-study and get videos of what it's like on the culture, and see the last away day they did, and see what the enablement looks like, and see what the tech stack looks like, and see the problems they're solving for customers. So that by the time that people even register an interest in joining a business, they've got so much more visibility as to what it will be like to work in that environment. Not, here's our job brief with the responsibility we want you to own. And then I think candidates will have way more opportunity to put in some front end for them. So maybe, they've got examples of their best work. Customer testimonial videos can be shown up front in the process. Maybe they automatically go and solve a challenge that customer's got and say, hey, I've solved this problem for you that I spotted. Would you like to just discuss how we could bring that into your business? So I think that first of all, the whole process of how we present opportunity and value will very likely change. And that will just change who gets hired into each business, because we talk about 89% of mishires being this cultural and attitudinal misalignment. How many times do people join a business and then go, what the fuck did I join? Like you spoke about, you want to scare people and you want to be really clear with the expectations. Is we have to do a better job of showing people what it's really going to be like to work here, so that we're being honest rather than convincing people to join and telling them they've been successful in winning a place. And if we can get that part right, people joining for the right reasons with all the expectations and questions answered up front, and we've got a way better lens on what people look like, alignment of people and mission will be so much higher, and that will solve a massive problem. And then in terms of the skill sets of people, is this whole AI enabled human being, isn't it? The promise is that we will spend more time doing the things that we're good at and things that we love. And that a lot of the problems that exist in way that revenue teams are structured today, and why so many are missing quota, because we've got bad data and the wrong ICP, and we don't have the right product, and our outreach isn't effective, and it's really hard to get hold of people. We've got technology helping us to solve that problem, so that we're spending more time speaking to humans, meeting humans in communities, getting referrals, where we're playing to our ability to build relationships and use trust much more. So I think that the EQ high salesperson who loves spending time with customers will be incredibly successful in this new era. And then the more businesses can build really strong communities around the problem they're helping customers to solve, the more loyalty that there'll be. And I think if we can get retention up because we're hiring the right people with the right expectations, and customers love us because they feel like they're part of what we're building together, then I think we solve a lot of the challenges that exist today from these fat organizations with huge amounts of inefficiencies and people who just don't even love it working there, who just stay because the paycheck.
Mm-hmm. I love that, man, because I actually wrote about this the other day with, CEOs and founders. And I'm like, your job is to sell the vision, but it's also your job to sell the reality.
Yeah.
And I agree with you completely because, 9 times out of 10, you're jumping on the airplane while you're still putting duct tape on it and still trying to make sure that it stays together. And it does nobody any benefit when you sell somebody the vision and then they come into the reality and they're like, what is this? This is not what I was sold.
Yeah.
Where to our conversation, for me, it's like, I'm either going to scare you or I'm going to excite you. Yeah. And either one is great for me because it knows you're either the right fit or you're not the right fit.
Yeah.
And so I agree with that. And I think also is like the evolution, like EQ, it's been lip service. Just like you're talking about AI, EQ has been lip service for some time. Mm-hmm. And I feel like what AI is now doing, we're in the Pepsi versus Cola world now in B2B, right? It's about building community. It's about understanding your customers. Yeah. And I agree with you I think the best reps are the ones that use AI to automate the things that they're either bad at or is just time consuming so they can actually step into their power stature, which is like, let me do the things that I'm great at doing. And so it's exciting to see more of that. And so, man, closing this out, if there are 3 things that you could give to the listeners, like they're like, I didn't listen to any of this, which we've gone an hour, which is crazy. What are the 3 things that you're like, no matter what, take away these 3 things with you?
So for salespeople or for leaders?
Let's do for leaders.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I think the first thing is if you want to create a multiplier environment where people massively scale the impact that you have as a business, you have to create an environment where that's possible. So create a collaborative environment where people can take ownership, you encourage resourcefulness, and the standard is that we execute to a level that no one else in the market can possibly reach. That's the first thing. The second thing is the data shows us that 89% of mishires come from cultural and attitudinal misalignment, and only 15% of businesses defined what good behaviors look like. So be one of the 15%. Where you've defined clearly, this is what makes someone a high performer in our business. This is what makes a multiplier. This is the values and behaviors that we expect. And then tell everyone about it. Make it part of your DNA. Make it part of what hooks talent into the business. And then the last thing is always be hiring for where you're trying to go. So bring people into the business who are thinking about, right, here's where we want to go with you. Here's the challenges we're going to solve together. You're not just hiring for the specific role you're trying to fill today. You're hiring for the behaviors of the people who are likely to stay with you for 3 to 5 years on this stage of your growth journey. Maybe not for life, but for a tour of duty, as Reid Hoffman says. And I think if you bring those type of people into the right environment where you've defined what good looks like, your hiring outcomes will be astronomically better than if you just leave it up to chance and hope that a good resume will save you.
Man, I love this. This has been such like an illuminating conversation just because I never get to go deep on, go to market. And when it comes to recruiting, especially as a revenue leader, right, is like, it's something that we're usually thrown into and we're so busy balancing a bunch of other things. We don't give it the due diligence and the intentionality that it deserves. Yeah. And so, man, like building the right team is everything. I truly believe this. Like I always say, you can have a great product, but you will never have a great company without great people.
Yeah.
Every startup leadership hire falls into one of 4 categories. Subtractors drain energy. Adders get the job done. Dividers create silos, but only multipliers drive impact and growth. If you're not hiring for impact, you're playing startup hiring roulette. Want to find out who's on your team? Take the Multiplier Scorecard.